Course 3, Lesson 31, we are adding integers and collecting like terms in this lesson. We're going to go through a lot of different ways that we can add integers, and it's up to you which one works for you. The first one is imagining that our numbers are like chips of different colors. Okay, we have red for our positive, blue for our negative. So if we have 6 red and 2 red, we would have 8 red altogether. So a positive plus a positive equals a positive. If we have 3 negatives and 5 negatives added together, we would get 8 negatives, which means that a negative plus a negative equals a negative. Okay, now as you can imagine, if we didn't have all of the negatives together added or all positives added, we would have different rules, and we do. If we're adding integers with the same sign, just like we saw with the chips, we end up with the same sign. We get a -9 and 13. When we're adding integers with different signs, though, a way that we can do that is subtract the two numbers and keep the sign of the greater absolute value. So we could do here 9 minus 5 getting us 4, and then which one has a greater absolute value? The absolute value of -5 or absolute value of 9? And you would say absolute value of 9, so we keep it as a +4. And our next one, we would do 8 minus 3 getting us 5. We would say which one has the greater absolute value? Well, that would be -8, so we make our 5 negative. Alright, so we can do it with chips, we can do it with this procedure. We can also do it by moving a flag. We can think of 0 as our starting point, and by going to the first location, 6, we would need to move 6 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when we're adding -4, we have to follow in the opposite direction because we have a negative. So we would go back 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we would see that 6 plus -4 is 2. Let's try it again. -3 plus -2. Okay, and we see if we start at 0, we're going to have to go back 3 and back another 2 to get to -5. Okay, so if we started at 0, we could go back 5 and then add 3. So we go forward 3. 1, 2, 3, and get -2. This is our last or another method of going about it, winning and losing points. So if you are playing a game and you lose 7 points and then win 9 points, that would be saying that you have a total of 2 points. If we lose 4 points and lose 2 points, then we have lost 6 points altogether. And we win 5 points but then lose 3, now we only have 2 points total. These are all different ways that we can go about adding our integers together. So you can practice these on your own. Make sure that you're using one of the methods or maybe a method of your own that works. Okay? But when you do these, you should get an answer of -2 plus 9. You should get a +7. -18 plus 35. Well, if we went back 18 and then added 35, that would mean that we would have a +17. 18 plus -13, you could think about this as winning and losing, and we would have a total of 5 points left when we did that. And then if we go back 25 and then back another 12, we would be at -37. Here are some other practice problems that you can use to practice and find the sum. Now the other part of this lesson is simplifying expressions by choosing some like terms. Now when we're talking about like terms, what you need to make sure of is the fact that if you have a like term, that means that the variable is exactly the same and the exponent on that variable is exactly the same. So in this case, we would say some like terms would be, well, 9y is just like having a y and an 8y and a 2y. So if I were to add all of those up and say 9y plus 2y plus 8y, I would see, well, if these are all how many y's I have, then that means altogether I have 20 y's. Notice that when I'm combining like terms and adding things up, the variable does not change. just the coefficient, that number in front. And then I see some other like terms like 2x, 3x, 5x. If I add those together, 2x plus 3x plus 5x, that means that I get 10x. And then finally, we have still some more like terms like 5, 2, 8, and 9. And when I add all of those together, 2, 5, 8, and 9. Well, let's see, 2 and 5 is 7, plus 8 is 15, plus 9 is 24. And if I were to make an entire expression of all this, since none of these are like terms, all I could say as my final expression is 20y plus 10x plus 24. That's all I could say. Now we have a couple other terms, things like coefficient, or we could say it's a numerical coefficient. That's the number that comes before the variable. And a constant is a number that never changes its value. So if we look at something like 3x squared, the 3 comes before our variable, so that is our coefficient. What comes before x, it's not a subtraction sign or a 1, it's actually a negative 1. And negative 4, well, that is a constant because it doesn't have our variable. It's not going to change value, so we would say that negative 4 is our constant. Variable here is x squared, x, and we don't really have a variable. Some people would argue that maybe we have a variable like x to the 0 power, but in this case, I would say that we just have none. We have no variable. Now we can do things like this and expand out and then simplify and solve. So we would use the distributive property to say that we get 3x plus 9. Okay, so we would do 3 times x and then 3 times 3. We would move them closer, so we would get 3x plus 7x plus 9. And then we would combine those like terms to get 10x plus 9. Okay, here are some other examples. I'll do a couple of these. If we expand out, then we're going to have 20 plus 5x minus 2x. We can combine these two and say that we have 20 plus 3x. Another one, we distribute out and we get 3x plus 6y minus 6y minus 3x. Well, if we look at the 6y minus 6y, that's just 0. If we have 3x minus 3x, that's another 0, so we just get 0. Let's try again. 8y minus 4y plus 4y minus 8. Well, minus 4y and plus 4y, those cancel out to be 0, but we still have an 8y minus 8. So we would say that's our answer, 8y minus 8. And then finally, we would say 9x plus 4x plus 8. We combine 9x and 4x since those are like terms and get 13x plus 8. And since those aren't like terms, we'll leave it as is. Now we can do this to find different things like the perimeter of this rectangle. We would have to add up 3y, x, 3y, and x and get 6y plus 2x. Or in this case, 2x and 2x, 3 and 3 would give us 4x plus 6. And then finally, some word problems. At 6 a.m. the temperature was negative 12 degrees. By noon the temperature increased by 8 degrees. Write an equation to find the temperature. Well, we would say we started at negative 12. We added 8 degrees, which means that we ended at negative 4 degrees. The hikers started on the desert floor, 182 below sea level. After an hour of hiking, they had climbed 1,018 feet. Write an equation for the situation. So we start at negative 182 since we're below sea level. We add 1,018. So a good way to go about this one is subtract the two numbers. So we're going to do 1,018 minus 182. And let's see, we need to borrow. And we will get 836. They're going to end up at 836 meters above sea level, or feet above sea level. Well, I hope this is helpful for your homework and for studying.